So I will talk about Muslim commitment for nature with the term Eco-Dschihad. And I would like to start with the term Eco-Dschihad, which is sometimes people wonder why we use this kind of term. And I would like to introduce to you Sarah Joseph. She is a British Muslim activist, and she used this term kind of in connection with Muslim activism for climate protection. And she says that it's necessary to have radical changes now. It's not enough to recycle bottles or things like that, but to have a really radical rethink on environmental issues. And so she chose this term Eco-Dschihad, which means, on the one hand, jihad is in Arabic a term which means a kind of effort for a special issue, and in a religious context means to commit oneself to Allah for a cause with all one's effort in order to please Allah and in order to sort of get involved in a special issue. And there are also terms like jihad al-nafs, which means a person making an effort to keep his ego in control, or a gender jihad is another term which is used in connection with justice among the sexes. So eco-jihad is a term which is commonly used for the fight against climate change, let's say it like that. And Sarah Joseph, she's one of the women who was very active in this area, and she also had this lifestyle magazine, ML, where she had with her team recommendations for a lifestyle which is sustainable and taking care of nature, amongst many other issues. So how do Muslim activists argue? I would like to present a few ideas of them, why they think it's important. First of all, they refer to religious sources like the Quran and the Hadith. They find various verses in the Quran, like verses that explain how important it is to be humble, to show gratitude. For example, the one verse which says, "Do you not see that everything in the heavens and on earth prostrates before Allah? The sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the trees and the animals and many people." So it's a kind of a way of showing gratitude by taking care of the nature, and also understanding that the creator, Allah, is almighty and he created the nature, and for that reason nature has to be taken care of. Also reflecting on the creation. The creation can be a sign for Allah's wonderful power. For example, the bee is described in the Quran, and they refer to things like that. So for example, the bee is an animal which is named in the Quran with honey which is produced by them. It's like a remedy for mankind. Also that the creation is perfect and nobody can see any mistakes in the creation, which is a verse in the Quran. Or respect to the creation is respect to the creator himself. Also things like keeping the laws, no exaggerations, to go the way of the middle. Another argument or another point is preserving nature is a kind of a necessity for Muslims. No destruction. La tufsidu fil ard is said in the Quran, don't destroy on earth. And also to live a simple life. They take the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a kind of role model. He ate little meat and he had a very simple life. He owned little. So this is the way they try to live when they try to live a sustainable life. Also the balance in nature. Do not disturb the balance given by God, the al-mizan. So those are the things they kind of incorporate in their arguments when they are active for nature and conservation. And the next question is, what unites them, and how and where do they act? So I will explain afterwards a few examples from Muslim believers who take action. But first of all, I would like to present a few things which unite them. So on the first hand, many of them work in the field of education in some way. Not all of them work in schools, but some of them work with youngsters on streets. They have organizations where they want to especially have young people as target groups. As they say, the young people are the ones which are going to have to carry the whole climate change issue. So education is a very important field. Also, empowerment is important. It's a very important tool to empower the young people and the people and empower them to take action, to find their own way of protecting the nature. Responsibility is a very important also tool, kind of feeling responsible for actions, feeling responsible for giving on information, for fighting for rights, for taking responsibility over oneself's actions. And also the issue of identity is a big issue, especially for Muslims in Europe, as they are a minority, and sometimes it's kind of a question from some Muslims where they question themselves, am I part of this society? Where do I belong? Where can I be part of? And how can I sort of live my Muslim life in a European context? And the environmental protection and climate protection is an issue which is found to be very strengthening for young people, for Muslim believers in Europe, to find themselves as part of a kind of a group. So that's very important too. Also, as I said, they work target group orientated, so they find out what their target group needs, what is their interest, how they can talk to them, and try to empower them. Also, ideas are made visible. So it's, for example, when kind of a destruction or something is getting destroyed, they always try to make it understandable in an easy way. For example, they take over picturing things like how much does it take for a bee to produce 1 kilo of honey? How many times does it have to move around the earth? Some things like that. That's important to them, to make it understandable and not to have it in an abstract way. And also, which is very interesting, which is beautiful, they accept the things as they are. They try to accept things and to have a very big trust in God. So that's the mainly religious issue which you can find, that even whatever happens, it's a kind of a religious belief that the trust in God is bigger than anything else. So on the one hand, they know we have to do something, but on the other hand, they believe that God is with them and that they can manage anything they want to, as long as they trust in God's help also. And this is the positive way of thinking, which I find very, very beautiful. They don't kind of get hopeless, but they say we do what we can and we have the help and the support from Allah. So I have a couple of examples here. This is, for example, Lucy Bushell-Matthews. She is from the organization MADE, Muslim Action for Development and Environment. And she says, we want to inspire young British Muslims and motivate them to serve society and the environment. So they have the two issues, especially to give British Muslims the feelings, you have a responsibility, you have an opportunity to do something, to change something, to take part in a very important issue, and on the other hand, of course, serving society and helping being responsible for the environment. And she is one of the founder of MADE. I'm not sure if the organization still exists, because the time I couldn't get in touch with them anymore. But it was a very interesting organization what they did with young people, a couple of events, and I will get back to them later on. Another interesting person is an artist and an educator, Magdalena von Wächter. She's Austrian. And those are people I interviewed for my book, Eco-Dschihad. It's a popular scientific written book, but it was interesting in the interviews what explanations they had for their environmental engagement. So Magdalena von Wächter said, it's this generation that will have to solve the problems, and we have to take over responsibility, and we can't just kind of buy cheap clothes and say we are good Muslims. We have to take care, we have to take responsibility for those things which we do. Then we have the next person is a headmistress of our school, and she says it's a kind of a universal responsibility through which bridges are built and synergies are formed, regardless of the culture or religion of each individual. So that's a very interesting thing that I also observed, that people get in touch through this environmental issue, no matter what nationality or religion or whatever mindset they have. So it's a big connecting goal they have. And she says that the motivation with everybody is, with everyone is different, and hers is that there is a mandate given in the Quran to do no harm on earth. So it's a kind of a religious duty for her, and this includes for her the duty to protect the environment as a whole and to avoid any act that is harmful to the environment as far as possible. So on a very individual level. And now I get to a couple of examples of organizations. This is the organization MADE I've told you about. This is a screenshot from the website, and they have chosen this verse from the Quran: Allah does not change the condition of people until they change what is in themselves, showing that activism is something important. As long as you don't make the first step, Allah will not support you, and they're trying to strive people to be engaged in activism. And this is a picture which they took when they were planting trees. There are some more projects they had, for example, a campaign for drinking water, tap water, and not buying bottles, plastic bottles and so on. So to have your own bottle with you and to get the water from the tap. It's clean. In Europe, you can drink water from every place normally. So get used to having your bottle with you, and don't use a lot of plastic bottles. Or they had this film screening before the flood where they looked at, they watched the film, and then they had a discussion afterwards. Also, they had this Tour de Salah. It's a kind of a cycling tour through London, where they just wanted to raise awareness on the Muslims and go through with a bicycle through London. And they stopped at mosques, had the prayers there, a kind of a connection between environmental activism and religious duty. This is an organization in Germany, Nur Energy, they call themselves, and they help mosques and other institutions to install solar panels. So besides that, they have many other issues also. For example, they started the Green Iftar, where they had this campaign to inform mosques about this idea, what a Green Iftar could look like, what you could what kind of things, products you could use, what is important to have a sustainable iftar, to have a reusable cutlery and have organic food and things like that. By the way, there's another organization, HIMA, in Germany. They also have similar projects. And these two guys, they call themselves Deen Travelers. They went by bicycle from the Netherlands to Mecca. And they chose wooden bicycles to kind of even have a bigger effort. And they showed everything on the social media when they were going by bike. So I think it took them a couple of months, and you could watch them on social media where they were and what they experienced, and how people reacted to them, because in many countries they're not used to many bicycle drivers, so they had to go on the road, on the motorway, or kind of motorway, and police stopped them and they had to explain what are they doing here and why are they going. I think it's in Saudi Arabia or something like that, where they had this experience, and then they got this support from the people there, saying, "Oh yes, I've heard about you in the media." So they spread their activism as much as they could, and they were invited to television programs and so forth, and they held workshops, and so it was very important to them to pass on this idea, just to kind of make it an issue, to think about it. How important it is to take care of the nature, and that bicycle riding is a very, very useful way of being of moving from one place to the other. This is an example of also from the trouble when they were at I think it was the mountain Ar-Rahma, I think, where they found this tree covered in plastic bags and stuff. And they collected all of the rubbish, and they talked to the people and invited them to help them. So it was a kind of a spreading trip they had. Talking to many people, also talking to shop owners, to taxi drivers, how important it is. For example, you can use a plastic bottle for something else. It's not just something which you throw away. You can use it for other things. You can reuse it, you can recycle it, you can have upcycling, things like that, trying to spread the ideas. And as you see, I'm focusing on Muslims in Europe. This is my main research focus. So this is a couple in Great Britain, Lutfi and Ruby, and they were professors in Oxford. And one day they decided they wanted to live a sustainable lifestyle, and they gave up their jobs, and they built a farmhouse, and now they have this farm with animals and bees, and they invite people to get to know the place, and they talk about their idea of guardians of the earth as Muslims, the responsibility as stewards on earth. Yeah, and they try to sort of bring Muslims, non-Muslims, whatever religion people have or no religion, bring them together and also discuss about the importance of nature protection. And I find their story really amazing, because they kind of stood back from a jobs at the university, where they said, we want to go into the practical area, we want to live what we're talking about. Now I come to the Green Guide to Hajj. It's maybe some of you have heard from it. It's now it's an app. It was a brochure when it was started, with recommendations how to have a green pilgrimage, religious teachings, and various recommendations how to kind of be sustainable while doing the pilgrimage. For example, they have the recommendation to use reusable bottles, use less water while making the ablution, or also performing Hajj only once in a lifetime. I mean, many Muslims, when they have the opportunity, they love to visit Mecca more often, but of course it's in a sustainable way not the right thing to do, because it is many people who want to go there. Also, they have the recommendation to consider of sacrificing only one sheep per family. With the Hajj, it's also this sacrifice at the end of the Hajj, and they say it's good if you can manage just with one sheep for the family to kind of practice the religious duty, but to leave the opportunity for others also. I mean, sheep need farmland, and this farmland could be used for planting agricultural products and so on. So that's also an issue there. And the theological recommendations are, for example, that Muslims are guardians on the earth. They should be mindful of their actions, and they are accountable for their actions. And it's a very interesting brochure or an app even. So yeah. This is just a slide I chose from the African Muslim Environment Network, because sometimes it seems that the Western countries, the Western people, European people try to kind of sort of teach people in Africa what the right thing is. So that was very important for me to also see that there is this organization. They say we especially are African Muslims helping the earth. So that's also my approach, that every society, every community has their own context, and you can't, as a different community, come to or from a special country, you can't go to another country and say, you do those things wrong, you have to change it, because we know how to do it. So that was very interesting for me and important for me, that also this organization was founded, and they support each other with ideas, with projects, and because of course African Muslims know better what the situation is like, and they help each other, and that's very interesting, as they also get together to exchange ideas and make networking, and that's very important too. So also I don't have a slide for that, but it's very interesting. Last year, Al Mizan has been launched. It's a kind of Islamic outlook in a bit to strengthen local, regional, and international actions that combat climate change. So it's kind of a new initiative to awaken Muslim organizations, Muslim scholars, institutions, that climate change and climate protection is a very important issue and has to be sort of thought about it with all the religious teachings. And yeah, so it's a kind of it's a trying to raise more awareness, if we can say that. So those were a couple of examples I could tell you about. Of course, there are much more. Just a few words to a research project that I have conducted last year at the Islamic Center in Vienna. We wanted to find out how the mosque kind of organizes themselves in the issue of sustainability. As mosques are a very important place to kind of teach Muslims the sustainability issues and to talk to Muslims. And mosques are, especially in Europe, places for Muslims who are religious to get together, to talk about issues, to discuss possibilities. So mosques are places where climate protection can also be taught. So if you have interest in this research project, you can just contact me. I can't go into detail, of course, now, but it was interesting for us. We talked to visitors of the mosque and to the people who work there, and tried to find out if people think that mosques are places which should also address climate protection and those issues. And it was very good to see that people say, yes, of course, it has to be addressed in mosques, and even the mosques are have a very high responsibility, as the people go there and they take information from the scholars, from the imams, from the teachers. Children have courses there on the weekends. Men have lessons there. We have the Friday prayers where many people go there. So this mosque is a big mosque for Austria. So it's about, I think, on the Eid festivals, we have about 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people going there. So that's a very big number of people coming together in Austrian context. Yeah, and the last, I would just like to inform you, if I am allowed to, we have this invitation and call for a meeting where Muslims and non-Muslims, of course, researchers in any way, and private persons and initiatives present themselves and get together and make what they do visible, so that we know from each other. And these presentations are collected, and we want to have a report. So that's what I experienced with my research, or with my kind of research with the Eco-Dschihad, also with my interviews, that many people don't know from initiatives and from projects. And there is so much resource here, there's so much here already available, and it's a shame when people don't know from each other. So that's why we initiated it. So if anybody has interest in that, I'm very happy to hear from you. And yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.